Growing up in the Bahamas, it's virtually impossible to not understand the important role that tourism plays in both our economy and in our national identity. You feel and see its magnitude everywhere, whether it's the family member that works at a hotel, whether it's the omnipresent cruise ships docked in Nassau's harbor, or the streams of tourists strolling along Bay Street and the sidewalks of Paradise Island. You hear about the figures too. Fundamentally, it accounts for 50 cents of both of what's in your pocket and also in mine. But I have to be honest and admit that up until very recently, I never really felt that I had a direct relationship with tourism. It was always something that I viewed in a depersonalized, distant sort of way. I never studied food and beverage at university or hospitality management, and I never formally worked in the industry. That is until I became a tourist myself. 3 years ago, I had the incredible opportunity to go to Africa for 3 months in the company of a few close friends. And throughout our time there, we visited 5 different countries over the course of 12 weeks. Our experiences were varied and in many cases incomparable to anything we'd ever undertaken before. In South Africa, we dove with great white sharks. We cycled through Nelson Mandela's old home village, and we also lost ourselves in the Apartheid Museum. In Zambia, we microglided above, bungee jumped over, and also whitewater rafted through the venerable Victoria Falls. In Tanzania, we were enthralled by the majesty of lions, cheetahs, leopards, hippopotami, hippos, as well as zebra, giraffes, and many other animals. We also climbed to the top of the world's tallest freestanding mountain, as well as attended a wedding ceremony in Nairobi and volunteered at an orphanage in Madagascar. When all was said and done, it seemed like every moment of our trip, every day of our journey was memorable, as in once-in-a-lifetime memorable. And of course, when one travels, you're given the incredible gift of being able to return home with refreshed perspectives and adjusted points of view. And I spent a lot of time after the trip reflecting on what it was specifically that had made that trip so memorable, what made the experiences about the trip so memorable. And this talk today is about the answers that I arrived at. So the first observation I had was in all of the countries we visited, they gave us an opportunity to connect directly with the communities, the citizens of the communities, the natural resources of the communities, and the stories that constitute each of those countries' unique existences. And I think it was precisely the fact that all of our experiences were authentic and real that contributed to them being deeply meaningful. The second observation I arrived at was that, interestingly, all of the countries that I visited had a lower per capita income than we do here in the Bahamas, in some cases significantly so, and yet it seemed that they were doing a much better job of recognizing, appreciating, and also celebrating the resources that they did have. So naturally, I started thinking about what we have here in the Bahamas that's worth coming to see, what's worth traveling thousands of miles for, what is potentially life-changing and truly memorable. And the first sort of thing that came to mind was the barrier reef in Andros. So behind the barrier reef in Australia and another legendary reef in Belize, our barrier reef in Andros is the 3rd largest barrier reef in the entire world. And yet, how many of us Bohemian countrymen and women are even aware of this fact? Although it is an official park operated by the Bahamas National Trust, I think it's fair to say that as a people, both government and citizens at large alike, we are far away from identifying the true value of this reef and treating it with the reverence that it deserves. Thus, it is no surprise that the 6 million people coming here each year, out of that number, very few of them are also aware of the reef's existence, much less its import either. You can also think of Dean's Blue Hole in Long Island, the deepest blue hole in the world, by the way, or Eleuthera's Glass Window Bridge. I think that's arguably one of the most striking vistas a human can lay eyes on. You also have the teeming salt flats of Inagua with the largest population in the world of pink West Indian flamingos. These are only a few of the natural wonders worthy of the world's attention. Indeed, we've been dealt a most generous hand when it comes to the richness of our archipelago. And yet, it's almost as though one must stumble across these natural wonders by accident in order to encounter their beauty. I know Christopher Columbus was a very, very controversial man. Indeed, his actions were responsible for tremendous loss of human life and an entire civilization, but I think he did have it right, and he saw the truth about the Bahamas when he first said of us, "The beauty of these islands surpasses that of any other, and as the day surpasses the night in splendor." If we don't recognize this, we can't expect anyone else to either. I started thinking beyond just our natural world in the Bahamas. I thought about our art, our architecture, our rhythmic music and dance, our language, the unassuming athletic prowess we possess, the role we played in shaping global world events. And I realized also that how many of people coming here actually get to experience these things. I'm going to give you an example of how a typical cruise ship passenger spends a day in the Bahamas, in this particular case Nassau, to help illustrate the answer, which I think most of you already know. We're going to call her Susie. And I'm going to use a cruise ship passenger because at this present time, 80% of tourists coming to the Bahamas are arriving on a cruise ship. So that really is the emblematic target tourist. So Susie will arrive here in Nassau. Her ship will pull up into the harbor. She'll disembark at some point, make her way onto Prince George Wharf. She'll then pass through Festival Place Pavilion, which is half arts and crafts gallery, half flea market. When she makes her way towards Bay Street, she'll probably be accosted by at least half a dozen individuals asking her if she'd like to have her hair braided, make her way to Market Street to view the selection of knockoff designer bags. She'll also be asked if she wants to take a taxi somewhere, or my personal favorite, go on a horse and carriage sherry ride, which is being pulled by an emaciated horse. If she survives this barrage, she'll walk along Bay Street where she'll pop her head into various retail stores selling Cuban-made cigars, imported souvenirs and t-shirts, as well as duty-free liquor and jewelry. At some point, Susie will probably make her way to the once world-famous straw market, where she'll have her pick of imported trinkets from foreign lands. And if Susie gets hungry or thirsty at some point during the afternoon, she can grab a bite to eat from many well-known eateries, including McDonald's, Burger King, Subway, Sbarro, Starbucks, and Señor Frogs. But hey, it's hard for Susie to justify eating or spending money in port when the cruise ship offers 24/7 dining options. At some point, when Susie grows hot or tired or both, she'll make her way back to the cruise ship where she'll remain until the cruise ship heads off to its next port, which will probably be a cruise line-owned private island. Now, there are many variations of this scenario, and they're all along the same lines, the most alarming of which is probably the fact that Susie will never get off the ship at all during her 7 to 12 hours here in port, and that is increasingly the case with cruise ship visitors coming to the Bahamas. So, my goal here is not necessarily to judge Susie's experience as a typical tourist experience, but more to use it to set the stage, to point out what to me is a glaring reality in our tourism landscape today. And that is, there is a huge disconnect between what we as Bohemians are most proud of and what the average tourist actually experiences when they come here. And I think one of the areas this dichotomy is most striking is when it comes to the area of food and cuisine. And it was buoyed by this specific paradox, the fact that very few visitors coming to the Bahamas experience an authentic Bohemian meal, that I decided to personally focus my efforts by using cuisine as a window into our country's heart and soul. I don't know a single Bohemian who does not think that Bohemian cuisine is the best, if not the best, close to the best cuisine in the world. At a minimum, we are proud of our food traditions and always, always eager to share them with others. In fact, our zeal and passion for the specialness of Bohemian food may be one of the few things that we unanimously agree on in the country. And yet, as I said, it's very uncommon for a visitor to experience a Bohemian meal. We started True Bohemian Food Tours in January 2013, and we were trying to address this dichotomy. Our mission was and still is to connect visitors with authentic Bohemian food, the stories behind these foods, and the people responsible for preparing and preserving these traditions. And what we were trying to do was give curious visitors who wanted more than souvenir shops and the straw market, or who might grow, at some point, tired of our magical beaches, an opportunity to discover who and what we Bohemians are all about. We wanted to connect them with the things that we are actually most proud of. And we wanted to show them and, of course, allow them to taste literally what they had been missing all this time, or if it was their first time here, what they likely would have missed if they were exploring by themselves. So, in short, we wanted them to eat, drink, and discover the Bahamas one delicious bite at a time. Now, specifically with our Bites of Nassau food tasting and cultural walking tour, the tour is designed to also put Nassau in perspective as far as the role it's played in the development of our nation, as well as the world at large. And although it's a food tour, in truth, the food is only a conduit or a vehicle for communicating the essence of who we are as a people and sharing our stories. One of my favorite stories that we showcase on the tour has to do with our first tasting stop called Bohemian cooking. It was started by Miss Maina Wallace almost 30 years ago in 1986, and today it's a 3-generation female establishment run by Miss Wallace herself, her daughter Prudence, and Miss Wallace's granddaughter Tasman, and they serve down-home traditional Bohemian food. Now, talking about and capturing the narrative of this family's resilience, their ability to overcome challenges, and also their overwhelmingly warm spirit is as powerful for us as serving the conch fritters, steamed chicken, macaroni and cheese, coleslaw, peas and rice, fried plantain, and ice-cold glass of switcher that we watch all of that down with to our guests. I can't express to you the delight and excitement that a guest displays when Miss Wallace or Prudence comes over to the table and offers a handshake or a hug, or maybe even brings a goat pepper over for some impromptu show and tell. Our Bites of Nassau food tasting cultural walking tour also includes ample helpings of history, culture, and architecture. So throughout the tour, we delve into topics as varied as Junkanoo, Androsia, the Loyalists and slavery, wrecking, piracy, blockade running, bootlegging, our illegal gambling industry, Bohemian independence, agriculture, and the very long and enduring narrative of the Bahamas that relates to us being a true melting pot of cultures. What we're really trying to do with this tour is literally and figuratively whet the appetites of our guests so that they will return to downtown Nassau empowered and now with the confidence to continue exploring on their own and returning to the 6 tasting locations we take them to on the tour and the over 20 other attractions and restaurants that we point out as part of the tour experience. And although this might sound like an ambitious goal for a food tour, we are boldly striving to literally transform the way people see and perceive the Bahamas. So what have we accomplished so far in this regard? Since we started the food tours last year, we've hosted over 3,500 guests, and we've received over 620 past guest reviews, 96% of which have been 5-star. And with that, the #1 ranking on TripAdvisor was the top Nassau activity. We've also received the Photo's Choice Experience Award, and we've been written about in Harper's Bazaar, The Independent, Travel Weekly, among other publications. Most rewarding for us, though, is when guests tell us that they left the tour having learned something new, connecting with our Bohemian history, and most importantly, have left downtown now with refreshed and inspired perspectives, wanting to come back and return for a future trip. Guests who previously said they didn't see any point in getting off the boat. To me, it's clear that these visitors, when presented with the truth about Nassau and about the Bahamas, are hungry, pun intended, for more of what we have to offer. Food and cuisine and culinary tourism is only one of the many treasures we have in our privileged possession. There are opportunities that abound in ecotourism, adventure tourism, heritage tourism, and sports tourism. And by that, I don't mean hosting lavish parties and inviting big-name celebrities to attend. Now, I'm not here today to offer a treatise on tourism strategy, although I do think having a strategy is important. But I am here to suggest that we need to fundamentally re-examine and redesign the very premise that our tourism model is based on. We need a tourism model that honors who we are as a people and what we already have, instead of trying to banish all of that aside. We are already resplendent with latent treasure. It's a matter of us recognizing this, appreciating this, and celebrating this, and then creating guest experiences that actually revolve around that recognition. This is where, in my opinion, our power truly lies. Now, this is not simply a case that I'm making to appeal to our collective pride or to your emotions. The world has noticed our inability and unwillingness to differentiate ourselves as not just another Caribbean country with pretty beaches. And we're feeling the severe effects economically in terms of market share. Recently, the Huffington Post listed the Bahamas in its top 10 most disappointing destinations in the world to visit. It's not that people are not coming to the Caribbean anymore. They're coming, they're just not coming here. Although there has been an increase in aggregate guests coming to the Bahamas over the past period of 2007-2013, the guests during that period that came and stayed on the island for more than one night, what the industry likes to refer to as stopovers, has actually decreased significantly. And in addition, the distinction between stopover guests and cruise ship passengers is important because a cruise ship guest on average spends 1/20th the amount that a stopover guest spends. So that's the difference between $10 and $200, $20 and $400, $50 and $1,000. And I realized that I did miss out a point that I wanted to go back to earlier before I finish, and that was taking the examples that I was giving you about our time in Africa and sort of tying that into a way in which one of the African countries that we visited really does use their resources in an effective fashion. That was Tanzania. When we were there, we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And the interesting thing about Tanzania is that, as I said, it has a lower per capita income than we do here in the Bahamas, and yet they treat Mount Kilimanjaro with incredible reverence. The people treat it as a source of pride. The government operates it as a national park. To even enter the national park, you have to be under the leadership of a trained expedition guide, someone who is trained for at least 2 years in both academic and a practical sense, including an apprenticeship. And the park charges $500 to $1,100 per person to enter. In aggregate, that generates between $25 and $50 million for the Tanzanian government. Just imagine what we could be doing here. So getting back to my sort of concluding thoughts, I basically think at the end of the day that it's not going to be enough for us to rely on another mega resort that's designed to keep people within its premises. Neither will it be enough for us to naively assume we can construct from scratch a carnival event that is predicated on the success and historical roots of our Trinidadian friends. We must become conscious enough to resist the long ingrained pattern of looking elsewhere and seeking outwards for solutions. I had posed a question to you guys earlier. What is it that we have here in the Bahamas that's worth coming to see, that's worth traveling thousands of miles for, that is potentially life-changing and truly memorable? And I firmly believe the answer is a lot. But until we start recognizing this, nobody else is going to. And I believe that once this happens, the entire tourism landscape will be transformed. We will go from being perceived as contrived, transactional, and unsettling to the engaging, rich, and dynamic destination that we truly are. Well-known poet and Buddhist Pema Chodron has said, "We already have everything we need." Ladies and gentlemen, everything we need, we already have. Thank you.